Thanks. Thanks. Let's start with a question that I think most of you are asking, and it would be good if this thing worked. And I don't know why it isn't. Something to do with your system.
Stop sharing and then reshare it again. And then share again.
Okay, let's try it again. Okay. All right. A question that you guys ask yourself all the time, I'm sure, as we all do. What should we eat, right? I mean, the human body is the most amazing machine. And like any other machine in the world, it needs maintenance and it needs fuel. Well, for us, that's food, right? So obviously, a lot of questions get asked about this because food is the only raw material that ever goes into our body. So obviously, we are made of the food that we consume. And these days, the variety is unbelievable, right? The choices from the crappiest fast foods to the most healthy fruits and vegetables, they're all available for us. Question is what to choose, what to make of it. Again, it is not advancing. When you live by technology, you die by technology.
It should work on Schwartz. I can't. I mean, you're on your presentation. There's no reason why it shouldn't work.
Well, okay. Temporarily, it's working. Okay, well, if it happens again, I think we just have to go off of Zoom. All right, so the advice actually is not all that complicated. Canada sometimes gets things right, and they got right the so-called food plate. And that really is a summary of what we should be eating. Your plate should be mostly fruits and vegetables and whole grains, and some protein. The protein does not have to be meat. It is possible to have a perfectly adequate diet without ever eating meat, but you do have to pay some attention to where your sources of protein come from. No.
Because we can't go off Zoom. That's how you're presenting.
Well.
So if we exit. Let's say. Where's your presentations here? This is your. No, it's not. This is your TV channel. Stop sharing. Yeah, Dr. Schwartz, because this is your presentation, right? It's here. So share. Maybe exit the. Use the arrows here.
I don't think that.
So I can see there.
Yeah, I don't think that will matter.
Like click here. Yeah. Get this off and just click the arrow. There we go.
So let's go back now.
Back one to the arrow now. I'll stay right here with you.
All right. Let's give this another shot. Now the power cord doesn't work. All right. So as we were saying, pretty simple, right? Canada's food plate. But let me start out with a story for you, a professorial story, since that's what I do, I profess. And one day a prof was standing in front of a class, very much like this, somewhat younger. And walked over to the side of the lecture room and picked up a bottle with a wriggling live worm in it. Picked up a bottle with a wriggling live worm in it and poured in a bit of alcohol, and the worm died. Repeated it with yet another bottle, poured in a little bit of chocolate syrup, and the worm died. Did it once more with a little bit of tobacco juice, and the worm died. And then he looked out at the students and says, "What do you make of that?" And one clever student in the back said, Sir, I know if you drink smoky chocolate, you don't have to worry about worms." He made the right observation, but came to the wrong conclusion. Science is all about making observations and coming to conclusions, and that's what we emphasize through our office at McGill. We try to shed light into the dark crevices of the world of pseudoscience, and it is a big world. It is a big world. The quacks are all over the place, and you may not recognize them as quacks because some of them are very good looking, such as my nemesis, the food babe. Her real name is Vanny Harry. She has appointed herself as being the nutritional guru who is going to lead us out of the dietary wilderness. And you can see some of the things that she says. If you can't pronounce it, you should not be eating it. Well, that's not very meaningful in science. We don't determine whether something is safe or not by the number of syllables in its chemical name. And I'm sure if I asked her to eat some beta-fructofuranosyl alpha-D-glucopyranoside, she would run in the opposite direction. But that is just the chemical term for sugar. And there are many, many good reasons to cut back on sugar intake. But the fact that its chemical name is multisyllabic is not one of them. So, we don't make decisions in science based upon whether or not you can pronounce the name of a chemical. And there's more. I mean, we're constantly urged to worry about MSG and aspartame and fluoride and artificial colors. Every day there's some sort of new scare. And a lot of the time, it isn't science-based. There are a lot of fearmongers out there whose game really usually is to try to sell you something, whether it's a book or whether it's some sort of a supplement. And it is not easy to navigate through this quagmire and get rid of all of the BS that is out there. But that, of course, is what we try to do. Now, sometimes it is easily recognizable, right? I mean, I think this is something that, we laugh at. But then when you go into a health food store and you find that you're urged to buy some aerobic oxygen, and the attendant will come up to you, possibly dressed in a white lab coat, and the week before, she or he may have been sweeping floors at McDonald's, but now all of a sudden they're an expert in nutrition, and they'll tell you that the oxygen content of the atmosphere is decreasing, and therefore we need to supplement, because of course we need oxygen. So all you need to do is put a few drops of this aerobic oxygen into a glass of water and drink it every day. And you can go right here to off the shelf and buy your aerobic oxygen. I'm not sure where you would go to buy anaerobic oxygen, but anyway, you can buy it here. This is, of course, total nonsense. The oxygen content of the atmosphere has been steady for millennia. And even if we do require some extra oxygen, it does not do you any good to put it into your stomach. We do not breathe through our gut. We breathe through our mouth and through our nose. So this is, of course, nonsense. What there is in there is a smidgen of potassium chlorate, which is a chemical that can release some oxygen. But the amount that is in there is such that one breath that we normally take would have more oxygen than what is available from one of these bottles. So, of course, this is just total nonsense. But then after scaring you about your oxygen deficiency, they will guide you over to the next aisle where ironically they tell you that what you need are antioxidants, and they don't recognize the irony of this because, of course, they have no scientific background. But there's more. You can also buy dehydrated water. I'm not sure what you rehydrate it with. So it's kind of, it's endless. And then there are all of the supplements and wonder products like apple cider vinegar. And as you can see, it cures everything. And one thing that you can take away is that the more claims that are made on behalf of a substance, the less likely that any of those are true. That's just the way that it works because of the way our body functions. There's no single substance that works in every organ, right? Of course, people worry about having to consume something to get healthier because, obviously there are medical problems. But when it claims to clean out your arteries, that's a bit much. We would all like to have our arteries clean, right? Nobody looks forward to plaque deposits in our arteries. And wish it were true that apple cider vinegar would clean them out. But that is just fanciful and wishful thinking. But why do people gravitate towards such things? Because they know that they probably are not eating all the right stuff. They know that they're consuming things like triple bypass burgers. And in order to consume that, you do have to go to Las Vegas to the Heart Attack Grill, where if you're over 350 pounds, you eat for free. This is the American way. Trump can't eat there for free yet, but is on his way. You notice that there's an ambulance standing by outside. And when you go inside, instead of napkins, you get hospital gowns, and you will be served by nurses, and they will not tell you anything about the cholesterol content of the food or the fat content. So people know that they're not eating the right thing. So that's why there is a market for all of the supplement nonsense. And the fact is that the triple bypass burger has actually been bypassed. Now they have the quadruple bypass burger. And this has the stunning amount of 9,980 calories. That's really something. And because, people know that these hamburgers are probably not all that healthy, there's a market for the so-called Impossible Burger and the Beyond Meat Burger, which are not made from meat at all. They're made from various kinds of vegetable sources. And people assume that just because these are made from plant products, they are necessarily healthier. Now, as you probably know, because there's so much being said about this, plant-based diets are indeed healthier than animal-based diet, both for the environment and for your body. I think one can make an argument for that. I don't think that you need to be exclusively plant-based, but the more plant-based foods we eat, the better. However, you also have to take a look at what those plant-based foods are. Yes, when you're having a salad or you're cooking up a dish of beans, yes, that's good. But this is just as processed as any meat dish that you might have. And these days, of course, there's a lot of concern about processed foods. Now, if you take a look at the nutrients, just look at the sodium content and notice that the vegetable burgers have more salt in them than a regular ground beef. So this is not any kind of miracle food. And when you take a look at the books that are being written, about all of this stuff, this is also pretty objectionable. Well, Dr. William Davis, who, believe it or not, is a cardiologist, and it's really tough to believe how someone like that could write a book which is as stupid as this one is. But his argument is that it's not the meat that we should worry about, it's the bun that you put it in. Why? Because it contains gluten. Now, gluten has become a dirty word, and it does merit that if you are a celiac disease patient. Then you absolutely have to stay away from gluten, which is a protein that is found in wheat products, also in rye and in barley. But less than 1% of the population suffers from celiac disease. The rest of us do not have to stay away from gluten, and there's plenty of evidence for that, the average person does not react to gluten. So anyway, but there are more books like that. All right, so you can't eat gluten. You can't drink milk, of course, because they will tell you that this is only for calves, and humans are not calves, so we should not be drinking the milk of cows. We're told that you should not be you should not be consuming vegetable oils. There is actually some truth to that, because the vegetable oils that we consume, soy oil, corn oil, sunflower oil, etc., are highly processed, and they contain a fatty acid called linoleic acid. And that actually is linked with an increased risk for heart disease. Now, I'm not doing that, so something shows up on the screen. You got to work on your system here. All right, so you can't eat soy. Neither can you eat meat, of course, and you can't eat sugar, but you can't eat sugar replacements either. So the message is, you just can't eat. Of course, that's the wrong message, because there is a lot of good, wholesome food out there to be consumed. But if you eat the wrong things, you better go and detox yourself, which is another scam. The human body is not, a network of pipes that has to be, cleaned out, and yet that's the message that the detox people tell you. Anytime that you see detox in any article, in any book, run the other way, because it's going to be absolute nonsense. So it's not surprising these days that people are confused and perplexed and disoriented, because there's so much misinformation and disinformation. There's a difference between those. Disinformation is false information that is being purposely spread, right? Trump, of course, is the classic example. I mean, he's an example for everything that's bad in the world, including the purveyance of disinformation. Misinformation is just a spreading of information that is wrong, but sometimes it's innocently done by people who just, get some sort of email and automatically share it. But it's quite a challenge to unconfuse people, because there's so much seemingly contradictory messaging that comes our way. One day we're told, eat butter because, it's great for you. Next day we're told, no, butter has saturated fat, it's going to increase your cholesterol, you better switch to margarine. And then you find out that margarine contains trans fats, you better stay away from that as well. Unfortunately, these days, you can find a study to back up whatever view you may have. And this is just a quick description of that. For example, look at tomatoes. You can find studies that show you that it reduces risk of cancer, and others that it increases it. And the same thing for everything in that list, except for bacon. There's nothing good that can be said about bacon. And what is the fastest growing food in North America? It's bacon. People talk health, but they eat taste. And, we find that often. People know what they should be eating, but that's not what they eat, right? And because of the tremendous choice that we have available to us, there's plenty of bacon-containing foods that are out there. So you can't really control the cursor well on this system. I don't know why. I have to tell you, I've given talks in hundreds and hundreds of places. I've never seen this problem. Anyway, you know, it used to be that we would sit down to dinner, and the only thing that we wondered about is what it tasted like, right? That's all. That's the only question that we asked. If it tasted good, we ate it. Today, things are different. We question everything. We want to know, is there nitrite in that food? And if there is nitrite in it, is there any vitamin C to prevent the nitrite from doing damage in the body? We go to a restaurant, we expect the waiter to know exactly what they are serving, and if you have allergic reactions, you want them to know that so they can bring you the appropriate dishes. Well, not everyone is educated enough to be able to give that kind of advice. The fact is that we are what we eat, right? As I told you at the beginning. Obviously, food is the only raw material that goes into our body, so we are constructed of food. Of course, our body breaks down the components of the food and reassembles them into the molecules that we need in some very elaborate processes. But, you know, the old adage that you are what you eat is, in fact, correct. But it is also true that you are not only what you eat, you also are what you read. That's how we know how the body functions. That's how we know what the chemicals are that go into our body. Our body is really just a bag of chemicals. That's what we are. But in order to know how all of this functions, we read. So we're not only what we eat, we also are what we read. And this is where you have to be careful. One day, you may find out that poutine, this Quebec delicacy, is actually doing us in. And of course, there's some truth to that. It is basically potatoes fried in all the wrong kind of oils. On top of it is some cheese curd and some gravy of unknown etiology. And it tastes good, right? So in spite of the huge amount of salt in there, people, of course, eat it. So virtually every day we get some sort of warning about what we should not eat. And obviously poutine is one of those, but we also get advice about what we should eat in order to prevent all kinds of disease and to prevent early death. In this particular case, it happened to be pomegranates. As you can see, prized since biblical times for their healing and anti-aging power. Well, you know, in science, we want something a bit more than a biblical reference to determine whether something is good for us or not. So what about this business with pomegranates? Well, let's go back to the Bible, because they give us the biblical reference. And we go back to the story of Adam and Eve. When Eve offered Adam that's what everyone says, an apple, except for the Bible, does not say that. It only says the fruit of the tree of knowledge. It is not named. Why do we think it's the apple? Because that's the fruit that artists in the Middle Ages knew. So they painted it as the fruit of the tree of knowledge. Whatever that fruit was, it wasn't an apple. Apples did not grow in that part of the world till much, much later. But the fruit of the tree of knowledge could have been a pomegranate, because pomegranates have grown in that area of the world since time immemorial. And actually, that would not have been a bad choice for the fruit of the tree of knowledge, because pomegranates contain compounds called aromatase inhibitors. Some of you may unfortunately know about aromatase inhibitors because they're used in chemotherapy. However, they're not extracted from pomegranates. They're made in the laboratory in the right dose. But it's interesting that pomegranates contain these. And of course, marketers being marketers, they can play up these ideas. And they can take a scientific experiment in which, in a lab, it was shown that cultured breast cancer cells don't multiply as quickly in pomegranate juice. What does that mean? It means if you go into a lab and take cultured breast cancer cells and bathe them in pomegranate juice, they don't multiply quickly. That's all it means. You cannot extrapolate from that to humans, unless, of course, you are in the marketing game, and then you can tell people that all you have to do to cheat death is drink pomegranate juice, and this is like a superhero, it's like you're a physician, and it can put you on life support. There's virtually no control over such advertising, and of course they have lawyers who make sure that they're not saying anything that is objectionable. Now, there's nothing wrong with drinking pomegranate juice, but it is not going to support your life. It is not a miracle product in any way. One can play that game. For example, I could do that with dried apricots. Dried apricots are a staple in the Himalayas, especially in the foothills of the Himalayas. It's a big part of their diet. Why? Because that's what they have. I can assure you they would rather have a steak with French fries and coleslaw, but it's not available. So they eat a lot of dried apricots. And this is also the part of the world where James Hilton located his classic novel, Lost Horizon, Shangri-La, right? Where people have impressive longevity. Well, there are stories that, Shangri-La is mythical, but in the foothills of the Himalayas, people do have impressive longevity. They claim to live to 100, 110. Unfortunately, they don't have any birth certificates. You see, he may only be 39. There's it's a tough life there in the foothills of the Himalayas. But if you do some cherry picking, or in this case, apricot picking, you can say that dried apricots contain a lot of beta-carotene. Beta-carotene is a potent antioxidant. So we should be eating these things. Well, beta-carotene you can also find in all kinds of supplements. So, of course, you can kind of cherry pick the data and convince people that they should be relying on these supplements. Or if they don't want the supplements, well, you can also eat the carrot because that contains a lot of beta-carotene. So as you can see, by sort of a cherry, it's okay. I think I'm fully charged here. Yeah. So anyway, by selective reporting of the literature, you can convince people that these supplements should be taken, but it is absolutely misleading. You can also play the game in the opposite direction. Now, most of us would assume that eating apples, this is a healthy thing to do, right? An apple a day keeps the doctor away. Well, if you throw it at him or her. But in any case, when you're eating an apple, what are you eating? You're consuming all of these. These are not additives. They're not pesticide residues. These are the building blocks of that apple. That's what it's made up of. But I can scare you because you look at this and one of the components here is acetone. Now, the last time that you encountered that was probably on the label of your nail polish remover, right above where it says, do not drink, which is good advice because acetone can be toxic. Also, in that apple, you have formaldehyde. That's the stuff that morticians use to embalm bodies. And formaldehyde is a carcinogen. So you don't want that in your body. And if that rubs you the wrong way, there's some rubbing alcohol in there as well. Now, all of this, of course, is true. And if I leave the story there, you have the impression that that apple is actually taking a bite out of you. And although what I told you is true, it is also nonsense. Because yes, there is acetone there, and there's formaldehyde and isopropanol, but they are there in vanishingly small amounts. Our body easily handles small doses of substances that in high doses would be toxic. Because as I said, body is just an incredible machine. And the liver and the kidneys know how to deal with these substances. 500 years ago, Paracelsus, sage, laid the cornerstone of toxicology with his classic phrase, sola dosis facit venenum. For those of you who've forgotten your Latin, it means only the dose makes the poison. And that is indeed the cornerstone of toxicology. You know, if you ask the question, is aspirin toxic? Well, it all depends, doesn't it? If you have a headache and you take an aspirin tablet and you lick it, your headache will not go away. If you take 2 tablets and swallow them, your headache will go away. You take the whole bottle of tablets and swallow them and you will go away. So it's the wrong question, because whenever we're dealing with toxicity, you have to put into context. What is it we're talking about? How much? How is it taken? Is it ingested? Is it absorbed through the skin? Is it inhaled? Those are the kind of questions that we have to ask. And today, when we ask those questions, the answers come from what we call the peer-reviewed literature, the scientific journals where researchers publish their results and the papers are reviewed by experts. It does not mean that this is a foolproof system, because when you are asked to review a paper, or referee the paper is the proper terminology, you have to assume that what was submitted, that what you're reviewing is all factual, that those researchers did exactly what they describe in the paper and the results were properly garnered. If someone is going to be fraudulent and submit fraudulent data, you're not going to find that because you can't redo the experiment. So it will only come out when someone, for some reason, tries to duplicate the results. This was the case with that horrific paper published by Andrew Wakefield in The Lancet, making a link between autism and vaccines. And it was published because, you know, it seemed like the data was correct. But it was only about 20 years later that someone tried to duplicate that and were unable to. And then, of course, we learned that there was more to this, that Wakefield was just a fraud artist who was trying to create his own vaccine to make money off of and defraud insurance companies. Anyway, that's a complicated story. But nevertheless, peer review is still the best system that we have to make sure that information is reliable. But long before peer review, people were asking questions. Days of Hippocrates, that's 2,000 years ago. There was no peer review then. People relied on expertise, on authority. And Hippocrates was authoritative. And he said things like, "Let thy food be thy medicine." Although the truth is, there's no documented evidence that he ever said that, but it's often said that he said that. He may well have. And that would have made sense, of course. But he also said things like, "Let us cools the body and curbs the passion." We don't have any evidence for that. Or that pigeon droppings are great for baldness. And now, mercifully, you didn't have to eat them. You would rub them on the bald head. But as you can see from his personal evidence, it didn't work very well. So the interesting thing here is that 2,000 years ago, scientific advice was a mix of sense and nonsense, as it is today. Except that today we have the possibility of separating the sense from the nonsense because we have enough authorities on whom to rely. He also suggested that flax was great for the intestines. Now there's some legitimacy to that. Flax is very high in fiber, and we know all about the benefits of fiber. Flax seeds, and this is the same plant that can be used to make garments, fabrics. But of course you can eat the seeds. And these seeds contain a lot of nutrients, including omega-3 fats, lignans, and fiber, all of which one can portray legitimately as being healthy. And there's published information about this. For example, this paper by Dr. Lillian Thompson, University of Toronto, Canada's second best university. And she has done a lot of studies on flax, and has in fact found that there is a compound in flaxseed that can be beneficial in reducing risk of breast cancer. And of course, the press gets a hold of that, and you see headlines like this. But the devil is in the details in science, because when you actually read this paper, you find that yes, the risk of breast cancer is reduced in premenopausal overweight women, not in everyone. So, you know, it's very important to read details in science. But yes, indeed, one can make a case for eating flax on a regular basis. But it is not the goose that lays the golden egg. And this is what people look for, right? People want miracles. There are no miracles out there. The last one was 1980 when the US beat the Russians in hockey. But since then, we have had no miracles. There are no geese that lay golden eggs. But there are chickens that do, at least as far as the farmer is concerned. If he's got chickens that are laying omega-3 eggs. Omega-3 fats have this aura of health, well, with some basis, because it turns out that people who eat a lot of fish, and the omega-3 fats are found in fish, are in general less prone to heart disease. So there, you know, is something good about that. But eggs have kind of a checkered history, right? And the reason that they have a checkered history is because the egg yolk is very rich in cholesterol. And cholesterol has become a dirty word. The story, of course, is that the higher blood cholesterol, the greater risk for heart disease. And since eggs contain cholesterol, you have to be careful about eating them. Today, we know that that is scientifically unsound. We know that eating cholesterol does not raise your blood cholesterol. It is eating certain foods, especially ones that have the wrong kind of saturated fats, that's what raises your cholesterol. So there's nothing wrong with eating eggs. But of course, egg marketers have this problem of this Damocles sword hanging over their head. So they had to come up with something. And because omega-3 fats are, you know, basking in the limelight, all of the stories about benefits of eating fish, is that, well, why not put some omega-3 fats into eggs? Well, how do you do this? Well, the first thing you can think of is feed your chickens fish meal, and then some of the omega-3 gets incorporated into eggs, which it actually does, but it makes the eggs smell and taste fishy. So that didn't work. But there are also some omega-3 fats in flaxseed. Not exactly the same ones as you find in fish, but acceptable. So the question was, why not then just feed your chickens flaxseed? Which they did. And presto, were born the omega-3 fats in eggs, and charging double or triple for those eggs. Because people don't ask the question, how much? And this is always a question that you should ask. When someone says there's omega-3 fats in something, you say, how much? Well, the amount is trivial. It is enough, of course, so that they can put it on the label, but it's not going to do anyone any good. And then, of course, the right question to ask is if the flaxseed really does have these health properties, why do you need the middleman? Why do you need the chicken, right? Why not just go and eat the flaxseed yourself? Which, of course, can be done, should be done, actually, but you got to grind it. Because if you don't, it comes out the way that it went in, which is not good. But you can make all kinds of things with flaxseed. You can make flaxseed bread, which is very tasty. And in Montreal, we even have flaxseed bagels, because Montreal, of course, is the mecca of bageldom. So we have all kinds of bagels, including flaxseed bagel. Each of these has 25 grams of flaxseed in it, which is the amount that Dr. Thompson used in her study that showed some benefit for breast cancer patients. 25 grams of flaxseed in a bagel is a lot. It may be healthy, but it's inedible. But nevertheless, I think it should outdo its cousin, which of course is the donut. The only thing that these have in common is geometry, right? Donuts are full of sugar, they're full of fat, and you will see the consequences of that. And we, of course, are seeing this in North America, where we have an absolute epidemic of obesity, and it's understandable why. If you go to a Krispy Kreme emporium, you can actually watch the donuts being made. I don't know why. If I were making them like that, I'd want to hide that operation, not because you see the donuts floating by in the liquid fat, and that liquid fat is the wrong kind of fat. It's made from oil seeds, and it's hydrogenated anyway. And you see the pipe at the back? That's where fresh fat keeps gushing in because so much is absorbed by the donuts that it constantly has to be leveled. And then they go under the glazer, and they're coated with sugar and with more fat. And what you have here is a concoction that is guaranteed to be full of saturated fat, and that raises your cholesterol. Of course, they don't tell you that, right? And people eat the donuts. Why? Because they taste good. Nobody thinks that they're good for them, but nevertheless, they eat them. And presto, we have the epidemic of obesity. People want cholesterol out of their life, even if they don't understand what that really is. And any time that a study comes out that shows that you can, in some simple way, lower your cholesterol, they will jump on that bandwagon. So a few years ago, we had this study about oat bran, which is the outer covering of the oat grain. And it usually is a cheap commodity and is sold as animal food. But anyway, so the study came out that this component in oat bran called beta-glucan lowers cholesterol. Well, that got a lot of publicity. They took it out of the mouths of horses because it was generally sold as horse feed, and they put it on our breakfast plate. So we were eating the horse food, they were eating our food, and we thought we were, doing ourselves some good, which we could have been, but again, the question to ask is about numbers. Yes, there was oat bran mania. People were buying all kinds of oat products. Dirty potato chips, bring them on, long as they contained oat bran. But the question that we need to ask is how much? I mean, people were trying to get oat bran in every possible way into their life without asking the appropriate question. And that appropriate question is, what is the active ingredient in there, and how much of it is in there, and how much do you have to eat to have any benefit? Well, the answer is that the active ingredient is a form of fiber called beta-glucan. How much of it do you have to eat? Well, about 3 grams of beta-glucan. That's the smallest amount that could possibly have an impact on your cholesterol. Minimal impact, but at least it might do something. Next question is, how do you know how much oat bran you have to eat to get 3 grams of beta-glucan? Well, the answer is that you need about 1 cup of oat bran hot cereal. Now, those of you who have tasted oat bran, you know that this is not one of God's gifts to the palate, right? So you got to dress it up in some way. You can add fruit, which is very good, and that's a very good way to eat it. But then you also, you ask the question of, what else is there? I mean, most people don't think of oat bran as a very tasty thing. Well, you can make oat bran muffins, but you'd have to eat about 3 to 5, and you'd be overdosing on the sugar. Oatmeal is a viable alternative because it's not that hard to eat 1.5 cups of oatmeal, and that can have an impact. Now, of course, depends on what else you eat. If you're going to be eating donuts every day, forget about eating oat bran. It's the overall diet that matters, and that's really what we have to think about. Now, General Mills also discovered that the O in Cheerio stands for oat bran. Of course, before this, they probably didn't even give a thought to what their product was made of. But all of a sudden, Cheerios contains oat bran. Well, yeah, the O may stand for oat bran. It also stands for 0, which is close to the amount of beta-glucan that you have in there. You'd have to eat about 5 servings of Cheerios every day to get your 3 grams of beta-glucan, and that's not something that most people would do. So numbers matter in science. Now, this is not to say that we should not be eating oatmeal or oat bran. I think it's a great thing to eat, especially when it's dressed up with berries. But again, don't get the idea that it's some kind of miracle food. There's no such thing. There are good diets and there are poor diets. And then there are books that try to navigate you through this maze. Mostly books that are nonsensical. If you go into a bookstore, this is what you find: how to eat away your illness, how to never get sick if you just eat the right way, all kinds of stuff. I like to pick on this one, Fit for Life, because it has been around a very long time. It's been out there for about 20 years, and sometimes it still makes it up on bestsellers list. It was written by Harvey and Marilyn Diamond, who at that time were married. They have since gotten divorced. Each one got married to someone half their age. And in any case, they had no scientific background whatsoever, none. But of course, that has never stopped anyone from pontificating on nutrition. I first heard about them when one of my students brought me a little excerpt from their first book, written on a card. I remember reading this. Within atoms and molecules reside the vital elements we know as enzymes. They're not things or substances. They're a life principle, atoms and molecules of every living cell. I thought, this must be a joke. I thought someone sat down and said to themselves, what is the greatest amount of scientific absurdity that can be put into the fewest words? Because that's what this is. Enzymes, of course, are molecules. They are things. They are substances. And you can put them in a bottle. You can have them on your shelf. They're biological catalysts, and they do important stuff in our body. But, I mean, this is just a ridiculous description. They also told us that the greatest threat to health is processed food. They, science, entered food industry was a sad day indeed. Now, there's a lot of stuff that can be said about processed foods. However, it depends on what kind of processed foods you're looking at. Frozen foods are processed foods. Nothing wrong with that. Depends on what the processing is. When you add iodine to salt, that's processing, and it prevents thyroid disease. When you add iron to cereals, that prevents anemia. That's all processing. So to make a blanket statement like that is ridiculous. And then they tell us about all the evils of processed food, especially about preservatives. They target sliced white bread. Now, I'm not going to tell you that sliced white bread is an angelic food. Of course not. We should be eating, whole grain bread. But it's not toxic. It doesn't kill you. But if you listen to the diamonds, you'll get that impression. Why? Because they tell you it contains preservatives. Well, it does. Why? Because if it doesn't, then in a couple of days, this is what it looks like. And market studies have shown that people do not buy this kind of bread. And they should not, because molds really contain a large variety of toxic substances. So in order to prevent that from happening, we put a preservative into the bread. In this particular case, it's calcium propionate. Now, when a marketer, food producer, wants to put a chemical into the food, they can't just all of a sudden decide that they're going to do this. This requires submitting all kinds of data to Health Canada or FDA in the US before an additive can be approved. And they look at all the benefits and look at all the risks. Well, the benefit here is that it prevents mold from growing. And mold is not something that you want to eat. So it is absolutely fascinating to me that in the last few years, preservatives have been kind of identified as toxins. Whereas the fact is that they're put in there to improve the safety profile of the food. No company says, I don't think we have been spending enough money on our product. Let's put in some useless preservatives so that we can scare our customers. No company thinks like that, right? It is put in there because it serves a purpose. Now, in France, indeed, they don't use preservatives in their baguettes, which is interesting. Now, of course, it's a different lifestyle there. They, buy their food every day and consume it that day. It's just a different way of living. But what is interesting here is that this calcium propionate that I told you about is actually a natural component of the human body. Anytime that we eat any kind of fat, it is metabolized and it is converted into propionates, and we actually sweat some propionates, which of course explains why the French carry their baguette home under their arm. This is the ultimate in natural preservation. Well, talking about the French, we got to make a stop at the French paradox. And that asks the question, how come that the French in France have 1/4 the coronary artery disease rate of North Americans, while they are consuming those buttery croissants, those fatty cheeses? They are stuffing their geese and eating the goose liver. How come that they have less heart disease? So we start looking for an answer. What do the French do different? They watch more Jerry Lewis movies than anyone in the world. Therefore, one could say, look, watching Jerry Lewis movies reduces risk of heart disease. That's an association. That is not a cause and effect relationship. If anything, he causes heart disease, doesn't prevent it. But the reason I mention this is because it is very important to know the difference between association and cause and effect, because in the case of the French paradox, I'm sure you have so frequently heard the rationale that it is the alcohol that is consumed from early childhood. But before we start doing that, before we start giving wine to our children, we better look at where that information comes from. Yes, it is true that they drink 30 times as much red wine as we do here in North America. It's also true that they have somewhat less heart disease, although that has been questioned because they don't fill out death certificates the same way in France. Sometimes they just put sudden death without any further explanation. But anyway, before we jump on that bandwagon, we want to take a scientific look into that glass of wine. Is there anything in there that actually could be beneficial? Well, there is a compound in there called resveratrol, and much has been written about that. It's an antioxidant. In laboratory studies, it has been shown in test animals to reduce deposits in arteries. It even has a mild anti-cancer effect. And of course, this has been played up, that this is why red wine is so healthy. What of course isn't mentioned, that those experiments done on animals used the equivalent of about 100 bottles of red wine every day. So numbers matter. Now, it's possible that eventually we'll be able to either extract resveratrol or make it in the lab and put it into supplements. But we also have to consider that when you're getting it from wine, well, first of all, you can't get enough, as I said, but that alcohol is also a carcinogen. This is well established. Alcohol is a cancer-causing substance. Now, of course, we still enjoy it because we evaluate risk versus benefit. And there are certain pleasures, certain benefits to be had from wine, but there is certainly a risk associated with it. So is it possible to get resveratrol without that risk? Maybe, if we can put it into a pill form. The trouble is that this is a notoriously unstable compound, very difficult to put into a pill form, and no one so far has really mastered that. So whenever you see resveratrol in a bottle on a shelf in the health food store, be suspicious, because the amount of resveratrol in there is going to be vanishingly small because it just doesn't keep. But you can see how easy it is to lead people down the garden path by selective information. If you're going to lead them down the garden path, at least tell them to stop along the way and eat the fruits and vegetables, because this we know. Populations that eat lots of fruits and vegetables, that's where health lies. And this is documented over and over again. But with the proviso that there are no such things as superfoods. That's a myth. It's a myth that sells books, because, you look at this oil of oregano, this author will tell you it's the cure for everything, that from allergies to zits. It's nonsense, but it sells. It's a misleading concept. There are no superfoods. There are no dramatic secrets to eating. It should be a balanced, low-calorie diet. You watch your salt intake, you watch your fat intake. But Americans aren't doing that, and we have the epidemic of obesity. It's a problem, because obesity is a risk factor for many diseases, including cancer. And it comes from eating the wrong foods. Sugar is a big culprit. The overconsumption of sugar is stunning. It tastes good, makes the medicine go down, right, as Mary Poppins told us. And gee, if you can't trust Mary, who can you trust? But it's the amounts that are being guzzled. Fantastic doses. And we have the scientific evidence that beverages that contain a lot of sugar, or indeed sugar substitutes, are a real problem. But look at the size of the beverages that are being consumed. In North America, you get soft drinks in these cups, which in Europe would serve as bathtubs, right? And people don't realize the sugar content. Now, I don't mean to pick on Coke, but it's just the most representative of soft drinks. That's the amount of sugar in that can of Coke, and that's a small can of Coke. You get the same amount in apple juice or indeed in orange juice, but at least you're getting some vitamins and minerals along with it, but the caloric content is still there. There are other issues. When you cook meat at high temperature, you form all kinds of nasty compounds, polycyclic hydrocarbons. And if you're eating the preserved meats like the salami, I wish I could tell you that there's no problem with that, because I like the taste of Hungarian salami. In Hungary, salami is a vegetable. But the fact is that consuming these processed foods is linked to colorectal cancer. So we got to be careful with the consumption. We want to eat mostly unprocessed foods. And you know what those are. Those are the fruits, vegetables, and the fresh meats, and not the French fries, the hot dogs, and the hamburgers. And there are issues with processed foods, no question. There are pesticide residues, although the fact is that we now detect pesticide residues to the extent of 1 part per trillion. That's the width of a credit card compared to the distance between the Earth and the Moon. So it's nothing. But of course, it makes for headlines. It's really like finding a needle not in a haystack, but in a world full of haystacks. So just because there's one needle in one haystack somewhere, is that going to stop you from a roll in the hay? Probably not. So again, numbers matter. But I leave you with a couple of final ideas here. The presence of a chemical does not equal the presence of risk. Yes, there are pesticide residues, and pesticides in high doses can be a problem. But you've got to take a look at how much there is on your food, and it's negligible. And then the final question is, what about supplements? If we don't have a great diet, should we not be supplementing just for some nutritional insurance? There's just no evidence that these supplements do anything for us. And I can show you paper upon paper showing that people who eat these supplements don't benefit. Antioxidants don't do what they're supposed to do. And the fact is that the people who are guzzling all these supplements are not the ones who should be. There are a lot of poor people out there who really have atrocious diets, who might benefit from these supplements, but they're not the ones who are buying it. It's the people who have money who buy all of these supplements. The one that I think one can argue has some benefit is vitamin D, especially for us here in the winter. We don't get enough sun. But other than that, I think it's just a waste of money. But one thing that isn't a waste of money, but unfortunately you can't bottle it, is exercise. That's how you stretch out your years. That's how you overcome the hurdles of life. Unfortunately, we can't bottle it. And it doesn't have to be vigorous exercise. Walking every day for 30 minutes significantly reduces diabetes risk and heart disease risk and cancer risk. But this is what people are doing in North America. So we got to stop that. And we have to keep informing people on what they should be eating. But as a final little note here, it's fine for us to be talking about whether we should be eating saccharin or not. But the fact is that every 3.5 seconds, someone in the world dies from hunger. And just since we've been talking here, there are 1,000 people who are no longer with us, purely because they did not have enough food to eat. So we kind of have the luxury here in North America talking about whether or not perfluoroalkyl substances in the food packaging is dangerous. Anyway, if you have questions, you can direct a lot of them to our website. You can sign up for a free weekly newsletter there, and we have lots of thousands of articles of all kinds of stuff. So if there are any questions, yeah, certainly we can see if we can answer a few.
Oh, thank you. That was super. We have time for 2 quick ones. Okay, Sam,